Today on Dr. Phil, Jeffrey Dahmer's journey to evil.
This shows Jeff at a very, very early age. He had such a sweet disposition.
Do you think there were warning signs?
There definitely were warning signs that I missed, but I didn't believe it.
The interview with Jeffrey Dahmer's father.
That's the bicycle that we learned that he had used to travel around the rural roads to pick up roadkill. He kept these animals and felt them, their insides, their entrails, terrible things like that. This strange association between roadkill and his sexual urges.
How could he wind up to be this serial killer? Today, what creates a monster? Is it nurture? Is it nature? Parents? DNA? As the popular new Netflix series Dahmer, Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story, pushes the heinous crimes of the notorious serial killer back into the spotlight, what can we learn about what made him the evil that he was? Over the past 2 days, we've been speaking with victims of Jeffrey Dahmer who claim he was a million times more terrifying than any horror series could ever hope to be. We've also been hearing from Jeffrey's parents, his father and stepmother that was involved in raising him, about his disturbing behavior. Now, before we continue with their never-before-seen interview and some chilling home movies about a young Jeffrey Dahmer, here's a brief recap.
It's been over 3 decades since the horrendous crimes of Jeffrey Dahmer shocked the city of Milwaukee and really the entire world.
And a new Netflix drama focuses on that terrifying story.
I cannot, for the sake of me, understand why anyone would want to glamorize that guy. At all. That's sick.
I think it was insensitive for the way it was done.
What was your reaction?
I threw up.
What did you feel a presence when you looked him in the eye?
I was face to face with Satan himself. That's how I felt. I feel so bad for the 2 gentlemen.
This was a cold-blooded, calculated killer. 20 years before Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story premiered on Netflix, I sat down with Jeffrey Dahmer's father and stepmother.
Hello. Hello, Dr. Phil.
I think watching this, you have to admit, you can see how his life writes like a Hollywood horror movie. Jeff was fascinated with a rotting animal carcass under the house and played with the bones and referred to them as fiddlesticks.
Jeff did seem to exhibit an interest in the way they clanked as he picked them up and put them back into the metal pail.
It was said that he had even impaled a dog's head.
He said he found this dog. I don't know if it's really true, to be honest with you, but he told me that he found this dog that he decapitated and put on a stake.
That is not normal to be fascinated with dead animals, body parts.
Tell me about the locked wooden box.
On several occasions, my mother had complained about seeing some pornography around. If I would have opened that box and found what was in there, I think I would have lost it.
We now know the box contained a human head.
Yes.
Bob, this is straight from a horror genre script, right?
Yes, this is very much a horror movie kind of thing. The big difference is here we've got a story which has affected all kinds of people who are still alive and who are still able to see this.
We're talking about dogs, we're talking about roadkill. How could you not know what took place with them?
I think there was, my expression, a chink in the DNA armor.
True crime is a fascination of people. This series on Netflix fascinates people for a variety of reasons. Is this all bad, or is there an upside to it?
there is an upside. And the upside, I believe, is there's something for potential victims to learn, listening to these stories, watching these stories.
I mean, we're all on a continuum. We all do bad things. We all sin. He was at the extreme of this continuum.
Here's what Jeffrey's dad had to say about being in contact with relatives of some of the victims.
Have you spoken to any of the families of his victims?
We've spoken to several, but there was only one that we've become very close friends with, the sister of one of the victims. And to this day, we remain good friends with her.
If those families are watching this now on television, is there anything you want to say to them, either from you or on Jeff's behalf?
Well, I'm extremely, very, very sorry that it happened to their loved ones. And if I could have done anything to prevent it, I would have. And I would ask them to forgive Jeff for what he did. He's paid the price, I believe, now. That doesn't lessen their hurt, but ask their forgiveness. Like Teresa said to me, Lionel, I forgive. When he was murdered, Teresa said to me, Lionel, I forgive Jeff.
Do you forgive him?
Yeah, I forgive him now. I mean, it's really horrible to think of, to try to keep thinking of all the things he did, but even though he did all these horrible things, we forgive St. Paul for all the people that he killed in the name of God, in the name of Judaism. He was forgiven completely. And so if God can forgive, which is demonstrated in the scriptures, if God can certainly forgive St. Paul, the teaching is, of course, that anyone can be forgiven.
Joel's reaction to that?
For me, that's a very hard way to answer that. Forgiveness to me has different levels. Stuff that he did consume me, that probably fueled my my alcohol and my drug use. But that said, forgiveness is not for so much the individuals, for myself. So to answer your question, no, I don't forgive him, but I don't hate him, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. I hate what he did, but it doesn't consume my life anymore because I was basically, locked in that. It's hard to explain. Maybe you could help me, Dr. Phil, if you know what I'm saying. I don't forgive him, but because the hatred, if I still hated him, I'm hurting myself. It's like fire is a good tool, but if it's unchecked, it burns out of control. So I would have burned myself out.
Billy, what do you say?
That makes sense.
I'm going to say no. And I'm going to say because it keeps going, a generation's 20, 30 years. Lost a son, lost a wife. My family goes through hell all the time. And when I was in therapy before my doctor passed away in 2008, part of the therapy was to be able to get rid of these conflicts, the anger, the being able to forgive, and stuff like that. But I'm not so sure I can forgive him.
This is my brother. We're tied for life by what we survived.
Rita, how about you?
Him, I forgive. The deed, no. That's how that works. Yeah. He as a person, I forgive that person. What the person did, no.
Do you think that there were red flags you missed?
When he was about 11, 12, he roamed around the country roads and gathered the remains of various animals.
How about Do you forgive him for his shortcomings in this drama and tragedy?
I'm not sure. I guess I was a little bit naive. I didn't think enough about, I was concentrating too much out of the premise that everything right with the spouse would automatically cause things to fall in place with the family. I just wish I had been I had a little bit more smarts to feel that I should be putting some of that effort with my son.
Preston, Billy, do you blame these parents for missing all these red flags?
I blame the father.
I can't forgive him.
Do you blame them for missing the red flags?
Yes. Yes, I do. I blame him for a whole lot of things. I'm sorry, you know. I can't help it. I mean,
It's okay.
my son, I love my son. I love my wife. I love my mama. I loved my family, and he threw a wrench in it. And his daddy, and I feel like that he knew something was wrong with Jeff. And he tried to put him in the military even to get rid of that problem.
And it's a domino effect, and and if I haven't said so far, I do want to say I'm so sorry about your son. Really. Now look at me. I'm not saying it casually. I'm really sorry about your son. Lionel and stepmother Sherry told me they were filled with guilt and shame about missing those red flags. Take a look.
Do you think, in retrospect, that there were red flags, there were warning signs that you missed?
There definitely were warning signs that I missed, but I didn't believe it, or it's hard to believe. It really is. I'll give you one example. When he was about somewhere in the 11, 12 to 14 age range, he roamed around the country roads where we lived and gathered on his bike with big plastic bags the remains of various animals, foxes, you know, small dogs, animals that had been killed on the road, and took them back home. And ours was extremely heavily wooded lot, a very rough terrain, where he did, as I found out later, at the time of his so-called insanity trial, found out for the first time there that he did this. And he kept these animals and felt them, explored them, their insides, their entrails, and terrible things like that. Although I've had friends who have told me they've done the same sort of thing, but that would have been a red flag.
Dr. Phil, that's a bunch of bull. Okay, he knew. He chose to look the other way. There's an old saying, you're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution.
And then he tries to dismiss it. 90% of what he just said was all these horrible things he was unaware of Jeffrey was doing, and then he wipes it away by saying, but then my friend said they did it too.
Right.
Well, okay, kids are fascinated. They, see a dead animal. What is that? And but you don't play with it, and you don't bring it home.
And you don't put your hands inside
Of course
a dead animal. He said, but I have friends that do. Is there anybody here that has a friend that puts their hands inside a dead animal?
This shows Jeff at a very, very early age. He had such a sweet disposition, and he was always happy. And there was always a lot of love and attention given to Jeff.
Now, Lionel shared home videos of Jeffrey and spoke fondly of his son from his early years. Now, perhaps That's why he had a hard time seeing the evil in his son. And I know evil is a big word, but there are certain circumstances where it just fits. Anyway, take a look at this.
This shows Jeff at a very, very early age. He had such a sweet disposition, sweet baby breath, and he was always happy. Christmas time was always a very happy time. It was a time when there were no real arguments. Jeff was always happy at Christmas time because there was a lot of things to eat. Easter was always important to him because he got his chocolate bunny. Thanksgiving was always spent with my family, and there was always a lot of love and attention given to Jeff. Jeff would always run towards me and jump in my arms. I would frequently carry Jeff on my shoulders or ride around on the handlebars of my bicycle. At this point, he's less than 7 years old, and he didn't go into his period of shyness until that point. Jeff, Dave, and his mother were happy, and I was happy that Jeff liked him and accepted him. They were 7 years apart, so I wouldn't say that they were extremely close in interests, but they did things together. Jeff really loved Frisky. He just loved the way Frisky paid attention to him and licked him and romped around with him. Jeff always had an interest in nature. He was very inquisitive. He liked biology class in school, and we did several things together for science fair. This is at Grandma Dahmer's house.
He loved his grandmother dearly.
Yeah.
He knew it was unconditional love.
Yeah.
Grandma never judged anything. He was just loved.
Packed his lunch when he went to work, when he was staying with her in Milwaukee. Made dinner for him. Was always concerned about everything he did. Jeff did a lot of riding on his bike on the rural roads. That's the bicycle that we learned that he had used with big plastic bags to travel around the rural roads to pick up roadkill. He was 12 to 14 years old. The happy little boy. And yet this was when he was 12 years old. So it was sort of at the beginning of this strange association between roadkill and his sexual urges. Things were forming in his mind that you can't see just by looking at a picture. He looks like a happy youth there.
Anybody besides me bothered by that tape? Anybody? First off, I'm bothered just by the way he's handling that dog.
Yeah.
And then large plastic bags driving around picking up roadkill. What the hell are you doing picking up roadkill? That's not something that's your average afternoon on your bike picking up roadkill and bringing it home. And what are you going to do when you bring it home? And he said, well, he's just a happy little boy. That's not a happy little boy's normal activity, right? Is it?
No, it's
Does
not.
that ring right to anybody?
No.
There are those people out there. And all of you at home need to know, these people are among us. There are Jeffrey Dahmers walking among us right now. Closed captioning provided by You know, Candace, you were saying there's a chink in the DNA, and you know, the truth is, these people do walk among us. They really do. And there are people like Candace and myself who deal with these people We sit across tables from them. We interview them and talk to them. I've been to prisons and interviewed these people time and again, and there's something we refer to as the dark triad that is present in certain people. And it's what you were referring to before. And I saw it in Jeffrey. There are three characteristics to what we call the dark triad. And one is psychopathy. These are just psychopaths. They don't have the ability to feel remorse. They absolutely exploit other people. They'll be aggressive and do anything. There's a narcissism there. They believe they are entitled to do what they want to do, that it's okay. They have a different set of rules. They'll do anything to anybody, anytime. And there's a certain Machiavellian characteristic to it. It is a dark, sort of evil kind of force about them. And when you put those three characteristics together in one person and then give them opportunity, you're going to get bad results. And do we know exactly how they're formed? We don't, but we can identify a path that most of them have been on. You look at these childhood experiences, they're often there, torturing small animals, setting fires, bedwetting, family trauma early on. I said this can border on actually going from a psychological characteristic to evil, for lack of a better word. And that's just the quality of being morally bad, wicked, intentionally causing harm, misfortune, disaster, or calamity. And I know I've told our boys, because of the things I see and the things that I know, spending 45 years and in this profession and dealing with people in the prison system, I've told our boys from the time they started going out and being in public, you need to realize there are people that get up every day, get dressed, and go out, and they don't have a good night until they've inflicted pain on somebody. You need to realize you may encounter people like that, and you have everything to lose and they have nothing to lose. So they can hit you in the head. You need your brain. All they need is to inflict pain. And so recognize that sometimes your best defense is to walk away, just get away from certain people. And you need to be aware there are those people out there. And all of y'all, all of you at home need to know these people are among us.
Yes.
There are Jeffrey Dahmers walking among us right now.
They're always looking. They're always hunting. Their victims are nothing more than a prop in a fantasy. Don't let your guard down.
Closed captioning provided by
Jeffrey Dahmer's murderous orgy is over. Throughout the trial that found him sane, grief-stricken families of the 15 men and boys Dahmer killed and mutilated held their peace.
Destroyed the baby of the family, and I hope you go to hell.
Only the sister of Errol Lindsay was unable to contain her rage.
I don't want to ever see my mother have to go through this again.
This was a case to tell the world that I did what I did not for reasons of hate. I hated no one. I knew I was sick or evil or both. I am so very sorry. I deserve whatever I get because of what I have done.
There is something I'd like to address too. His father said his so-called insanity trial. Jeffrey Dahmer's insanity is a legal term. It's not a clinical term, and it means the person did not know the difference between right from wrong at the time they committed the behavior that they're being charged with a crime. And Jeffrey Dahmer, not insane. He knew what he was doing was wrong, and he chose to do it.
His prima facie behavior of trying to cover up and hide his crimes indicated that he knew they were wrong, or he wouldn't have been trying to cover them up and hide them.
Exactly.
You don't try to hide something unless you know it's wrong.
They're always looking, they're always hunting, and their victims are nothing more than a prop in a fantasy, their fantasy that they want to play out. And you're there to help them do that, but you don't know it. So don't let your guard down. Don't ever go away with someone. Someone, as one of the, I think you mentioned, Rita, that he said to your younger brother, would you like to earn some money? Oh, yes, I would. Well, you have to come to my house. No. What he was trying to do was get your little brother from an area where he might be seen to a private area where he could hurt him. Right. So teach your kids and yourself, don't ever go with someone who's trying to get you to go somewhere with them, into their house, or let me walk you out to your car. This is a bad neighborhood. Yeah, because you're in it. No. Don't let your guard down.
You need to think about it every time you decide to get mouthy, or every time you decide to shove somebody, or every time you decide to swipe right and go meet somebody in a place where you don't have protection and you don't have cover, because they're out there and they're not going to identify themselves. You know, I've talked about evil, which is really certainly not a diagnosis. It's more descriptive. I've seen it more than once. And I want you to consider whether you use that term or some other concept to know that there are bad people in this world. We've been talking about one today, but I want you to have that concept in your mind, because how bad people get leverage on good people is a whole concept you need to consider. We'll talk about that after the break. Did you kill your mother?
Yeah.
You've got a sledgehammer in one hand, and you open that door. What's going through your head at that moment?
You ready?
You know, there are all kinds of people in this world. You know, we all know that. I've talked today about the fact that we have all sorts of diagnoses for people, as Candace was talking about. We have antisocial personality, something we call psychopaths, sociopaths. And from time to time, in the last 45 years, I've encountered people that I thought transcended, you know, all the labels that we had and rose to the level of just being pure evil. I haven't seen them very often, but there are times that I've encountered those that I thought, yeah, this goes to a whole nother level. And I'm going to show you an example of one of those people that I was asked to interview in Tennessee. I was asked to interview this person by his lawyer. And when I arrived at the jail to interview a Zachary Davis, the guards there really didn't want to be in the same room with him. He was shackled, hands and feet around his waist, but they seriously didn't want to be in his physical space because they sensed such a evil energy around this individual. I'm going to tell you, you may not want to watch it, so it's very brief, but if you want to look away and just listen, you can do that. I'll just tell you ahead of time. But I think this will put you on alert to what's out in society. Let's take a look at the clip. Did you kill your mother?
Yeah.
And why did you kill her?
She wasn't taking care of my family.
And so because she wasn't taking care of you and your family, you decided to kill her. And where did you hit her?
In the head.
Where was she when you did this?
She was asleep.
You've got a sledgehammer in one hand, and you open that door. What's going through your head at that moment?
My mind was pretty much blank.
And when you swung that hammer the first time, did you swing it hard?
Mm-hmm.
Did she make a noise?
I could just hear the hammer hitting her head.
And what did it sound like?
It was this wet, thumping sound.
And then you hit her again. And again.
Yeah.
You said maybe 20 times?
About.
Why so many?
I wanted to make sure she was dead.
Did you laugh when you were hitting her?
Yeah.
Why did you laugh?
I just thought she deserved it.
You heard when I said, did it make a sound? You heard him laugh when I said that. I asked him if they came in and said, hey, there's been a technical error and we're going to have to release you. Do you think you would be okay to go back out into society? And he said, yeah, sure. And I said, you don't like criticism. What if you had a job at a grocery store and the manager came by and criticized what you were doing? What would be your response? He said, I would probably take a can of green beans and smash his head in until he was dead. And I said, but you think you're good to go? He said, yeah, I'm good. No feeling, no affect. Only time he showed any feeling at all was to laugh at the sound of his mother's head crushing under the sledgehammer. That person, someone just like him, is walking around out there today. Jeffrey Dahmer, I think, was cut from that cloth. Closed captioning provided by... I'm not trying to make you paranoid. I'm trying to make you aware. Just be aware. Tell your kids, tell yourself, just be aware. There are those people that are that way. Fair statement?
Yeah.
And maybe they'll be caught, maybe they won't. But we have to be situationally aware. That's all I'm saying. We're going to stop for today. I want to thank the two of you for having the courage to come here and talk about this. Rita, I can't thank you enough for coming here and sharing your thoughts and your feelings about this. Your insights and your contributions have been tremendously appreciated, and God bless you for sharing about this and talking about the things you did.
Thank you.
You've added a lot to this. The three of you have meant an awful lot, I think, to people to get the real story here of the impact this has on people, and you've acquitted yourselves very well. So I'm honored to have had the three of you here. So thank you very much.
God bless you, Rita.
Thank you. You too.
A special thanks to Professor Bob Thompson, and as always, to my good friend, former FBI profiler and host of the podcast Killer Psyche, Candace DeLong. And that podcast, by the way, Killer Psyche, is really instructive, and it's also extremely, it's informative, it's instructive, it's compelling. And I really encourage you to subscribe to it, download it, and listen to Candace Wisdom. She's a former psychiatric nurse. She brings that to the table, plus 20 years as an FBI profiler with some astounding case backlog to talk about, many that we've dealt with here on the show. So it's Killer Psyche, it's a Wondery, and I hope you'll take a look at it. For information about today's episode, or if you want to share your story, log on to drphil.com. And if you want to voice your conversation, you can find me on social media, you know where, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And if you want to keep up with all things Dr. Phil, then scan the flow code on the screen that you see right now, and it will link you to exclusive content you cannot get anywhere else. We talk about meaningful things on my podcast as well, Fill in the Blanks, and I've Got a Secret with Robin McGraw. On mine right now, we're talking about victimhood, and Robin's talking about The Secret to Food is Medicine with Uma Naidu, a Harvard-trained psychiatrist, chef, and trained nutrition specialist. And on top of all this, she's a best-selling author, penning This Is Your Brain on Food, an indispensable guide to the surprising foods that fight depression, anxiety, PTSD, OCD, ADHD, and more. So it's really, really informative. I appreciate y'all being here. I know this wasn't a fun topic, but hopefully it was an informative topic. And you guys have, I hope you learned something today. And I hope we put you on alert today as well. Stay safe. We'll see you next time. Thanks for being here. Great job with you.